Hour 2 of Wildcat Insider. Mitch Fortner, the voice of the Cats. Wyatt Thompson. AJ Shaw is on our board today. The phone number is 785-537-1350. You want to know that number for a couple of reasons. One, just in case you want to call in, ask a question, make a comment, you could certainly do so. The phone lines are open. And then in our next segment, at the end of our next segment, the one after this one, we're giving away 2 more tickets for K-State Hoops against Baylor. This is the men taking on the Baylor Bears. So Scott Drew versus Jerome Tang, part 3, in Bramlage tomorrow night at 7 with coverage, of course, right here on K-Man. But if you wanted to go to the game live, you got a chance to win a couple of tickets here in this hour. Let's circle back, Wyatt, and let's once again mention the K-State women's basketball team and the success that they've had this season, starting 17-1. 5-0 in Big 12 play. They beat Texas on Saturday 61-58. Let's get to the news that came out today. This was anticipated. There's no doubt about that. Especially with the number of top 10 teams that lost this week. It was actually, for women's basketball, a very chaotic week. For example, Baylor lost twice.
Yeah.
That is a pretty big shocker. That is a very good Baylor team that lost twice. Angel Reese and LSU loses at Auburn. That was a pretty big upset. The Pac-12 is really good this year. I think the Pac-12 currently has 4 teams in the top 25. Those are going to be, if K-State runs in any of them, like in an NCAA tournament, that could be a pretty tough draw. But to me, there was no doubt that, so first of all, Virginia Tech lost, so you didn't have to worry about trying to jump them. They were going to fall. K-State just beating Texas was going to get you a top 10 spot. But there was plenty of chaos there that K-State ends up earlier this morning, ending up with the ranking that I think with most K-State fans would feel, finally, it's about time. We're getting the respect we deserve.
Yeah.
After the AP voters were keeping K-State women's basketball outside of the top 10. And Wyatt, earlier today, they land at number 7. And I had said that, listen, most of these teams in the top 10 are always in the top 10. At least they have been like what feels like to be the last decade, with the exception of UConn, who's on the outside looking in. Actually, they may have jumped in this week. I can't remember if they did so or not. But it was going to take, I know they beat Iowa. That's huge, but it was going to take beating a Texas to get in, and they did. So, and I'm sure you would agree, with them landing at number 7, it feels like K-State women's basketball has finally arrived on the national landscape.
Well, I think people have been aware that they have been around for a little while, since probably the win at Iowa City. And I think a lot of people, as K-State continued to win, couldn't really understand why were they 12th when they started analyzing some of the teams above them, right? But as you said, a lot of those teams in the top 10 are consistently there. And those voters, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, don't like to take them out of that top 10 unless it's a pretty obvious thing. And or move somebody in there to the top 10 that hasn't been there for a little while, and that's probably the case here too. It makes a lot of sense to a degree. But for me, again, knowing this group, for us, we thought they belonged a month ago. True?
Ever since winning in Iowa City.
That's it, yeah.
It got K-State ranked, but not as ranked as high as you would have thought. And that game, took place in November.
Yeah.
So you're talking, close to a couple of months of K-State trying to work its way up 15 spots.
It is difficult, though, because they were not ranked when the season began. Is that accurate? That is true, correct? Or were they at the bottom?
No, I don't think they were. I think maybe receiving votes. Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think maybe receiving votes. And that, let's be honest, that is a monumental climb. It happens. somebody ought to do a story on that. How many times does that happen in a season or seasons? Where the 5-year stretch, 10-year stretch, whatever it might be, that'd be kind of a nice angle. But it is a little bit of a rarity to be unranked as the season starts, and then before you really, let's say mid-January, you're ranked 7th. That's a pretty monumental move.
I looked it up here. When K-State beat Iowa, it was November 16th, so it was 2 months ago tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
So that's how long, and I know that wasn't on a Monday or a weekend. That was a midweek game. So a few days later now, K-State's showing up in the polls, I do believe, after that game. And then it took nearly 2 months to get there. And you're talking 2 months of not losing a game, other than losing to Iowa.
Right.
So, and that was on a neutral site. K-State first time around beats Iowa by 7. The second time around, Iowa wins by 7. And that Caitlin Clark had to go off.
Yeah, that game could have gone either way. I think K-State had the lead with a couple of minutes to go, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, K-State just didn't finish strong.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, even though Caitlin Clark was scoring a ton of points, K-State still had a shot to win.
Sure.
And that's why, I truly feel, you're talking about the national runner-up last year, the best player in women's college basketball history. You're now 2-1 against her. You beat Texas at home. You've played Iowa both on the road and at a neutral site. To me, K-State's played some tough opponents. They played a North Carolina team that's top 25, Western Kentucky, who's an NCAA tournament team. And they're going to have tough games. They have Baylor coming up here very shortly.
Maybe that was the example we should have used, because I think they got a lot of run when they beat Iowa and very little when they beat those two teams. But when you put all of that together, that's why I think people questioned, why are they 15th and then why are they 12th and, what have you, as opposed to where they are now. Well, you get Texas, home, road, or otherwise, people are going to notice that. And that's right or wrong, that's how the voters react. It's just what it is.
Well, and it's totally fair to say, AP voters for men's basketball versus women's basketball, if you're voting in women's basketball people, that's a lot harder than the men's stuff, because trying to watch these games, if you want the eye test to be a part of it, it's a lot harder to watch these games because, of course, it doesn't get the coverage as much as the men's side. Most of these women's games are online only. They're ESPN Plus games, and the men are on ESPN, ESPN2 on Saturdays. I think, there are more women's games on Sundays, which is good. Allows you to watch more games. Plus, women's basketball is pretty popular right now, especially with the star power. It did feel like K-State cleared a pretty big hurdle, I think, especially for the fans. I don't think I put the clip in here, but, Jeff Mittie was asked about it earlier today, like, hey, what do you think about now being a top 10 team? I don't think about it at all. It's a ranking. We got bigger fish to fry than just being a top 10 team. That's great, but you don't get there without winning, and you don't stay there without winning.
Well,
so,
that's it. It feels great for K-State fans to revel in this, that you are finally where you thought you should be a month ago or whatever.
This is more for us, really, than it is actually the team. It's respect for the team.
Yeah,
but this is something definitely for us.
Yeah, but I do think with Coach Mittie and his staff and those young players, it's more about, okay, here we are, but now let's stay there, right? Continue to just do what you do, and they've done what they've done. 17-1 is pretty legit. 5-0 in this league is pretty legit. When we talked last hour with you get into the top 10 for lots of reasons, but winning is the biggest one. But most people that really follow it closely and vote, and I don't think there are enough of those, but that's another story, they know that K-State has one of the best 5 men centers, whatever you want to say, in women's college basketball. They have, lots of depth and lots of talent, and so I think they're here for the long haul. I'll say it that way.
Well, I would honestly like to. I don't know how to get it done, but I would like to be a women's basketball AP voter.
Well,
I would. I think I know enough to make a pretty educated poll to make that happen. So I'm going to definitely start looking into that. I think. listen, I'm not the most educated in women's college basketball, but I pay attention to enough of it to give a pretty educated poll out there. And plus, K-State needs a little representation in the voting. I don't know if K-State does have any media that votes on the AP poll. So, or I don't even think KU does.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. That's probably something we ought to look into. But there are a lot of AP voters at least that's from my memory. But I don't know like the individual voters currently, especially with the women's college game.
Listen, as I was voting, K-State would have been a top 10 team a long time ago. I can promise you that. They definitely would have jumped. They would have been top 10 prior to probably Texas. I don't know.
You're a voter for the men's, right?
No, I'm not. And I wanted to say Kellis was, but I'm not sure if he's doing it anymore.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I think the way it works is like there is a state-by-state person in charge of determining who is going to be the voters representing out of the state of Kansas. And I think Kellis used to be an AP voter, but I'm not sure he does anymore. Like Blair Kirchhoff is an example. Kansas City Star, he's an AP voter.
Mm-hmm. Been around a long time, does a good. And there's a guy that should be a voter. Frankly. Let's talk about Aoka for a second.
Okay.
In terms of just the impact and the accomplishment that is the all-time blocks leader at K-State and 2,000 career points. 2,000.
And that's elite company that she joins. I mean, it was already first of all, she's the first active player to have her name up in the rafters, by the way. It's because of that 61 points 2 years ago against Oklahoma. But, I mean, she is now – I mean, if she wasn't already for sure a GOAT, and we're not talking gap GOAT, we're just talking greatest of all time for K-State women's basketball, she is now up there because now she joins Brittany Chambers, Aoka Lee, Kendra Wecker – Nicole Oldie and Kendra Wecker as one of the greats. And I've already done the math on this, and this started at the beginning of Big 12 play. If you just went, the 18 games in Big 12 play, and you had a minimum of one Big 12 tournament game, one NCAA tournament game, Yoki is approaching breaking the record for rebounds all time, and she'll get there this year. But also has a shot to become the all-time leading scorer at K-State. But she would need to average 20 points a game to get there. Well, I mean, the last year she played basketball full season, she averaged 21 a game. It can be done. Now, it took a game of 61 points.
Sure.
But I would also, K-State will be a postseason team.
But yeah, she could have 12 one night and 40 another night, though, too. That's how that works, right? I mean, it's just it would be let's say it this way. What she has accomplished to this point has just been to the stars. But if she would pull that off and also be the school's all-time, think about it, all-time leading scorer, 2,000 points, rebounds, block shots, I don't know how you could do any better than that. I mean, that's crazy.
Well, and I've been scared of saying this. I'm just going to say it. I've been dancing around it. I've been hinting at this by saying that people don't realize the ceiling of this team. I truly believe K-State women's basketball is a Final Four team. I really do. With the experience, with the size, maybe Texas was a little bit more athletic, but K-State grinded through that.
Yeah.
And they can beat a lot of teams. They haven't faced all the best teams yet, but on a neutral site, K-State can go beat some teams. I truly feel this is the Final Four team has to do with having the best defense in the country. That's a huge part of that. But also the reaction of the team, the reaction from Aoka Lee, with all these accolades, you probably won't find a more humble team. You're not going to see Aoka Lee on a court in a big game pointing at her finger and talking a lot of trash. That's not the kind of, at least I don't see her as that kind of person. They know how to keep the mental part of the game in check. Yoki, it's like every press conference, she is asked about an accolade. Hey, today you passed this record. You just got this record. Hey, you're the Big 12 Player of the Week. Cool. That's great. Yeah.
Right.
Just happy for my teammates, happy to get the win. You won't find a more humble person in basketball than Aoka Lee. Well, with her leadership, what's going to happen? That's going to trickle down. The teammates are going to feed off of that. And she's going to be a leader in the mental game as she will in the actual game of how to lob the basketball to her. So she's the leader of the team, and the teammates are going to feed off of that. And I think they already have.
Sure.
And when you ask about, oh, hey, you're close to being ranked, or now you're a top 10 team, you're going to get the most humble answers that you will in the nation. So to be able to handle this success and to continue to still win, be an impressive basketball team, they're a little bit banged up, but Gabby should be fine for the game on Wednesday against TCU. Hurt her ankle in the Texas game, but she should be okay. You know, Yoki got her in the Oklahoma game. Saw her in a boot earlier today, but she's feeling better. And she was still able to put 21 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 blocks on a hurt foot against one of the best teams in the nation. So not only do you have a humble team that's a very good team, they're also pretty tough. So that's a pretty big equation, but to me, it adds up to this being a quality Final Four type of team. So I've been dancing around saying that. I don't know why. I feel like by saying it, I'm going to jinx them, or now they're going to lose 3 in a row, and they're not going to beat teams that they should be beaten. I don't know. I mean, it's college basketball. I mean, it's really hard to go on an 11-game winning streak. Hardly anybody gets to do that when you consider how they've already played 5 games in conference play.
Well, especially when you look at the rest of the league. I mean, they just beat Texas, but you mentioned earlier that Iowa State is very, very good again. Baylor, even though they lost twice last week, very good. And we'll talk men's basketball again in our next segment, but think about what we've seen in the very, very beginnings of a conference race in men's basketball, right? I mean, UCF comes to mind right off. They get clubbed here 77-52, go home and beat Kansas, and they follow up a huge, huge, huge win, probably the best win in their history, beating Kansas at home with a home loss to BYU.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
So, again, Yoki against Texas became the 4th player in program history to reach 2,000 career points. She passed Breonna Lewis for now the most blocked shots in program history. And by the way, K-State now number 7 in the nation. Pretty big moment for K-State women's basketball. Why? Did you know the last time K-State women's basketball was a top 10 team AP poll was the final poll in the 03-04 season? It has been 20 years almost that K-State was a top 10 team. The last time they've been ranked this high was the first poll of the 03-04 season when they were preseason ranked number 5.
Yeah.
So this has been a long time in the making to get K-State women's basketball back to where they were 20 years ago, where we just shouted out those names. Kendra Wecker and Nicole Oldie, who played together, how elite that team was.
Yeah, they were such good talents, and it goes even deeper than that with Lori Kane and I don't even want to probably try to name everybody, but I mean you had several pro players on that team, and that was a really, really great bunch. I got to K-State in 2002, and in those first couple of years I was here, you know, the women were packing the place. I mean, they were spectacularly good, and let's hope those crowds continue to grow with this team, because as Coach said earlier in that first hour when you played that, you know, having 7,000 in that building on Saturday was special.
The next game for the K-State women, they're at TCU on Wednesday night, 6:30 for the tip-off. Pregame at 6 here on K-Man. The Horned Frogs 14-4, but they've lost 4 straight. So they're now 1-4 in Big 12 play. Big reason for the losing streak is now they're without their starting center, a 6'7" center in Sedona Prince. That's a heck of a name, by the way. She's out with a broken finger, will not play. She was averaging 21 points, 11 rebounds a game. So that's a big piece for TCU to be missing in a game where the opponent has an Aoka Lee. Let's take a break, Wyatt. When we come back, let's jump back to men's hoops. We look at the future for the K-State men as they play tomorrow against the Baylor Bears. Not only will we preview the 9th-ranked team in the country in the Baylor Bears under head coach Scott Drew, we have 2 more tickets to give away to that game, and that's coming up at the end of the next segment. Preview of Baylor next on Wyatt. Appreciate AJ popping on for a moment to give the latest school closings. What did it take back in the day for you to get a snow day? Because everybody, you would walk 10 miles of snow uphill if you had to get to school.
Well, I don't know about that part, but it seems like in this particular case, they're probably maybe a little bit more, I don't know if smarter is the right word, but maybe more cautious because of the incredible wind chill along with, if we're being honest here, the forecast today was for light snow and less than an inch, right? I think we got quite a bit more than that. Now, I don't know how much more, but the wind chill factor is, I think, the concern of these administrators for all those young people being out, and that's you just have to be on top of that and no risk, right? It's better to make it up somewhere along the line. I don't remember missing too many days with snow, honestly, as a young kid. Do you?
I remember 1 year of high school. We probably, this is no joke, it seemed like every weekend we were getting snow.
Really?
I swear, we probably had 8 consecutive Mondays that were a snow day.
Wow.
Just because it kept snowing on weekends.
Are you sure you just didn't go?
Good question.
That sounds like a lot to me.
As a teenager, I was pretty tough to get out of bed some mornings.
Sure, I'm sure.
Mom, the alarm clock was Mom yelling up the stairs, "Get out of bed, let's go."
Let's go. Yeah.
And, I would hit the snooze one time. You did not hit the snooze multiple times on Mom being the alarm clock. But also, when I was a junior in high school is when we had that ice storm.
Oh, yeah.
Which was 2007, 2008. And so I remember when we got that ice storm, so living in Morganville, it's a town of 180, half of the town got its electricity back because, when you have ice storms like that, it really weighs down the power lines and you'll lose power.
Oh, yeah.
And, man, when those, tree branches start freezing and they pop off the trees, it's like firecrackers going off. And but when we lost power, half the town got it back. We were not that half a town. We did not have power for 8 days.
That's a lot.
My goodness.
Luckily,
the most I went without power was 1 day.
Luckily, my dad, smart guy, before that even happened, he had a heads-up play here. Went and bought a generator at Home Depot.
There you go.
Didn't take long after that. This is just a story I heard. This is according to him. A guy went into Home Depot and sold them out. Bought all the generators and started then selling them, he says, out in the parking lot for 3 times the price. Started price gouging.
Yeah. You know what just popped into my mind when you said price gouging?
Go ahead.
Have you seen the numbers for the Chiefs game?
You're talking about for this recent playoff game?
Chiefs-Dolphins
27 million, right?
23 million people, the highest-rated streaming event ever.
People, you were not supposed to buy into it. You're supposed to teach the Peacock Network that you weren't going to, pay the money to go watch the game, and you were going to.
But my question is how many of them canceled that subscription today?
Right. No, I did not hear that number.
Yeah, but 23 million, that's crazy.
So
It'd be a great survey to conduct.
Yeah.
How many people canceled their Peacock subscription after the game?
Well, I personally know of about 4. That's just me.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah. My son said that he refused to pay I don't even know what it cost.
Well,
he said $30, but that sounds a little high. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But
I can be a cheapskate, and K-Man had it for free.
Yeah.
And so I saved a few bucks.
Sure.
And just listened to K-Man.
And you're listening to the best NFL play-by-play guy out there.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. without a doubt.
My assumption is Peacock is a lot more than $30. Streaming services are up pretty high now.
Last I checked, you could do a $5 subscription, but I didn't know if that would cover, like, if you got the Chiefs game in there.
I see.
I didn't look into it. And I've had it off and on, to watch whatever I wanted to watch. They also cover, like pro wrestling stuff. Matt Walsh is a big pro wrestling guy, so I'm sure he had the Peacock subscription. But I didn't have it at the time, so nope, didn't end up watching it.
It's actually $6 a month, so 72 years. That's not a bad deal, actually.
If you caught the tickets at the right time, you probably could have got into the game cheaper than actually paying for the Peacock network. Because
somebody was saying the tickets were as low as $40 there in the afternoon before the game on Saturday. Is that right, you think?
My girl, yeah. I saw it as low as $33.
Is that right?
So my girlfriend's dad and her brother, they have season tickets, but it was Upper Deck. They sold those tickets, and then with, I guess, some of that money, or they gave them away, and with some of that, whatever money they got off of them or whatever, they bought just a couple of cheap lower level and went to the game, which I had no interest. No interest in going. Way too cold. I don't care if it is a playoff game. Way too cold to sit out there and take on a game like that. Now, good for those that diehard Chiefs fans that were bundled up in 17 layers. I'm too small to put on 17 layers.
Well,
I'm not going to be able to move.
Yeah, that's. I mean, everything, I suppose, is relative, but you do salute those people that brave that. Because it was so bone-chillingly cold.
Okay, we talked enough weather. Can we get Wyatt, if you don't mind, give us a little preview of what Baylor has to offer?
Well, really high-level elite offensive team, I think, is probably where you start. They have a good big man, albeit a freshman, in Yves Mittie. He's a 7-foot, 235-pounder. From Cameroon, and he has really helped them. Jalen Bridges, the former West Virginia player, he's actually from Fairmont, West Virginia, just near Morgantown, so a hometown kid, but closing his career his final 2 years at Baylor. So you put those two guys with Jacoby Walter, Jaden Nixon, and Ray J. Dennis, and then probably I'd mention Langston Love off the bench. Those are pretty elite shooting guards. So I think you can do a lot of good things against them and still, have trouble getting by them because they're averaging, 87 plus points a game. They shoot, they average 9 made threes a game, average that. And those really good shooters, Jacoby Walters, 40% from three. Jalen Bridges is 40% from three at 6'9" and 225. And then Nunn is at 46%, Ray J. Dennis at 40%, and Langston Love at 48%. So they're pretty elite there.
And K-State, I don't know how long, but they recruited Ray J. Dennis, and that's been a pretty good get there for Baylor, especially early on. He's been hitting shots, and that's definitely what stands out to me about Baylor. Their hot three-point shooting. They are a deadly team from three that you do not want to get in a track meet with.
It's really interesting when you think about how the landscape of college athletics has changed, and I'm speaking mostly with football and men's basketball here. We talk about losing guys to the portal or gaining from the portal. The one thing that I think you would have to be happy for a guy like Ray J. Dennis, who, and I'm just being honest, there's absolutely nothing wrong with playing at Toledo. It's a MAC school. They have good athletics there and what have you, but think about his life and how different it is now playing at Baylor as an example. You're in a brand new arena, playing for a team that not that long ago was a national champion. Now they're in the top 10. That's a good thing, right? Having an opportunity, if you're good enough to play at a program like that and trade up, so to speak, move up in the portal, that's really good for a lot of these young guys. And it's Perry and Kaluma is an example, And especially Tyler going from North Texas to Power 5.
Right.
That's really cool.
Well, also Big 12 conference making some history earlier today. I don't know if you saw this, Wyatt, but 8 teams ranked in the AP top 25, most ever.
Yeah, and you look at the league to this point, and it really has been unique, hasn't it? Man, you look at we're down to 2 undefeateds now because there were 3 going into Saturday and 2 played each other with K-State and Tech. So Tech wins, Baylor wins, but did you notice how tough it was for them to beat Cincinnati at home?
Right.
That was a 62-59 game. And the league is just that. I mean, it's. I think every game you're going to have a 15 or 20 point game here and there once in a while, but generally speaking, these are going to be grind them out, 1 to 2 to 3, 4 kind of possession games more times than not here between now and the first part of March.
I said it on Friday. I'm like, Big 12 hoops this year is going to be way more entertaining, in my opinion, to Big 12 football. I think Big 12 football is a little bit down this year. There's a lot of quarterback injuries. Weren't very many marquee matchups, you would say. Big 12 for the second straight year is, pound for pound, clearly the best conference in the nation. All the toughest schedules still left in college basketball are all 14 Big 12 teams. And you also have UCF, BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston are going to be way more competitive than their football brethrens. So you already have Houston at 1-2 in Big 12 play as a top 10 team. And they've started 1-2. UCF beats Kansas, and Cincinnati seems like they can, if they play good enough for long enough, they could beat just about anybody because they've been so competitive against Texas and Baylor. And by the way, they started with a win at BYU, who's been a top 25 team.
There has only been 6 road wins in the Big 12 to this point in conference play.
Wow.
Baylor has one. Texas Tech has one. K-State has one. BYU has one. Cincinnati won and Texas won. So it is challenging. And if you're a betting person, how much money would you be willing to put on Iowa State at BYU tomorrow night?
At BYU, Iowa just beat Houston.
That's the other thing.
Know.
Look at,
I'd probably take Iowa State.
Houston had won, 23 straight regular season games?
And then they lose 2 in a row.
Yeah, and they lose 2 in a row, both on the road.
Shout out to TCU.
Yeah,
TCU getting that home win.
Yeah,
on their last possession.
And think about life for them at 2-1. Had they won the Kansas game, had that call gone a little bit differently, and they won that game.
Boy. Yeah.
So now you got 3 top 10 wins, and you're 3-0. Oh my gosh, crazy.
Let's take a break. When we come back, actually, hold on just a second. I'll preview what we're going to do when we come back. I want to get to a couple of social media questions for Wyatt. But guess what? We have 2 more tickets to give away for K-State men's basketball hosting what I would say is the best offensive team in the Big 12, the Baylor Bears, tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Bramlage Coliseum. If you want 2 tickets, first of all, before you call in, make sure you can use the tickets. You got to pick them up from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock tomorrow, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow, here at 2414 Casement Road. 2 tickets, Cats, Bears, 537-1350. Caller number 4 is winning 2 tickets to the game. More Wildcat Insiders next. Wildcat Insider. Adam from Litterville is going to K-State versus Baylor tomorrow, so congratulations to Adam being our second hour winner, or hour number 2 winner. For the tickets tomorrow night, again, tip-off is at 7 o'clock. We'll join pregame in progress pretty much right at tip-off, as we'll have Chiefs Kingdom on from 6 to 7 tomorrow evening. If you want the Jeff Mittie Show, Sunny 102.5, beginning in about 10 minutes. Jeff Mittie Show, you'll be able to hear that from 6 to 7. Wyatt, got a couple of social media questions.
Okay.
For the voice, I'm sorry. Let me turn your mic on there. Again, Mitch with Voice of the Cats, Wyatt Thompson. Coming from Cats fan Cam asking, will we get any other portal wide receiver? I know K-State's looking to land one, and that one would be Dante Cephas from Penn State. Other than that, I know sounds like K-State lost a commit to Tulane. Mm-hmm. Earlier, was that today or yesterday? He has committed to Tulane. That's where he's basically from. He's a Southern guy, wanted to stay South, even though he visited K-State. And so it's a transfer from Alabama. I got a good feeling that K-State will be able to land Dante Cephas, transfer from Penn State, 5th leading receiver from a year ago, over 200 yards. Outside for that wide receiver, I'm not quite sure who would be on the radar right now. I don't know how much you know.
Well, you said quite a bit there. I guess what I would say is I do think the young man from Penn State that you mentioned, there's some good in that. You hope it happens. I think they could still potentially take another receiver, maybe a corner. That's the neat part about this because they've done really pretty well in additions, and yet still have a little bit more to handle, and there's still quite a bit of talent out there in the portal at this particular point. You wouldn't think that that's necessarily the case, but I think there's a lot of good football players there. So I would expect them to try to get one more receiver, absolutely, for sure.
What do you feel about K-State maybe trying to get a running back in the portal? Because I thought it was interesting, we didn't see Joe Jackson in the Pop-Tarts Bowl and get carries, and I was a little surprised by that.
I have to be honest, I was a little surprised too because I think he practiced well. I think they really like his game. But I almost equate it to another position like with Tyler Nellam. Nellam is the transfer corner from SEMO who was injured in the preseason, really didn't – I think he played in just the one game. I think he has a chance to really help K-State down the road. Thought he might – this is just me thinking out loud – thought he might get a few snaps in the bowl. I don't think that happened. That's probably the deal with Joe. And again, you got to go you got to go with the hot hand there, and we saw the kind of game that DJ Giddens has, and we know what kind of bull he can be. He can handle a lot of carries. I mean, I don't think he has any issue at all with running the ball 30 or 35 times, do you? So it is about opportunities. It's like, this is maybe the wrong way to equate it, but it's like what Coach Tang was talking about on the radio show last week. He said, I wish I had 400 minutes for all of those guys because we need to get them some minutes, but I have 200, not 400. That was in relation to a question about guys like RJ and Buddy Rich getting more minutes. So, yeah, they're not done yet. A little work to do yet.
Let's save the last break for the last segment. We got to squeeze in one more break. We'll be back with the rest of Wildcat Insider coming up next. See, I wasn't lying about having to take one more really quick break. So the other social media question I got, this is actually a first for me. I got a question from a DM on Instagram, which I had to accept because I did not follow this person. So this is a first. But just from Landon, I won't give the last name, but from Landon, wanted to know how long it takes you to prepare for a game. So like a basketball game. Baylor's coming up. How long have you been prepping for this game?
Well, probably for the most part, I've been studying for the last couple of months on these league teams. I work kind of like you play them with the early ones sooner than the others. But like I'm walking around here with a Baylor chart, an Oklahoma State chart. Still have Tech, West Virginia, and UCF, and then I've done the outline for the games next week with Iowa State and Houston. So it's hard to quantify exactly how long it takes because it's just a continual process. But I'll just kind of ballpark it here. I think football, there's even more preseason work for me personally, just because there's so much more to it. But I'm going to say it's probably for each basketball game, probably about I'll say 20, 25 hours total. But that's just ballparking it and not really taking into consideration, the work that I've done, more of the work in the last week as opposed to the last month and a half. That makes sense? Because there was some work in that month and a half, probably more than you wanted to know.
Well, I mean, as a broadcaster, I know sometimes, especially for college games, you could spend a long time prepping for just a couple of hours of work.
And you learn as you go, too. We all want to have everything on our charts, right? You want to get all of that information into the broadcast, and that never happens.
No.
It will never, ever happen.
Yeah.
I think most of the students that I talk to, I would tell them if you get anywhere in the vicinity of maybe 15% of that into the broadcast or whatever, maybe 20, you're doing pretty well. Just because you got to let it's not television where you can plan out, well, we're going to do this after this break and our 94-foot walk with Jay Billis in this break, and that's not how radio works, right? You have to let the game be it. I had a lady say to me today, she says, I depend on you because she doesn't see very well. And so she may have the game on, but she's still listening to the radio because, Wyatt tells the score and the time a lot more than the TV guys do. So it is what it is.
Well, should remind everybody, Saturday is actually a pretty big day for K-State basketball because we actually have a doubleheader. It's
That's
not
right.
like back-to-back. There's a bit of a gap there. Mm-hmm. K-State women on Saturday will host KU at 1, and then the K-State men will host Oklahoma State at 6. So there's an opportunity to watch 2 games in Bramlage on Saturday. Just hoping, fingers crossed, the weather isn't completely horrible and you can actually, drive somewhere.
I think it's supposed to be in the teens, but
Okay.
I don't think there's a whole lot of a, knock on wood, of a snow chance. Yeah, but it's Kansas. That stuff can change, as we said earlier. Probably got a little more snow today than they really thought we were going to get.
Real quick, no Big 12 games tonight. Tomorrow, the interesting one is, of course, we talked about it earlier, Iowa State and BYU. But how about Wednesday? Number 25 Texas Tech is going to visit number 5 Houston.
I'm excited about that game.
Yeah.
I really think Houston is still pretty elite, but I think they're finding out that when you go to places like Hilton Coliseum, it's hard. They could have won that game and didn't. But I think we're going to be able to say that a lot about a lot of teams, whether it's Kansas State or Kansas or Iowa State or Houston or whoever it might be. This league is so good with coaches, players, but also fan bases, and it's a great ticket to go watch major college basketball in the Big 12 these days. Go do it.
Yeah, there are a couple of top 25 games for Saturday. Number 24, Iowa State visiting TCU. Horned Frogs now ranked 19th. Number 20, BYU visiting number 25, Texas Tech. And by the way, again, tomorrow, K-State men host Baylor for a 7 o'clock tip-off. That's going to do it for Wildcat Insider. For A.J. Shaw and the voice of the Cats, Wyatt Thompson, I'm Mitch Fortner. Go Cats.